Hi, boys and girls. Our story today is called One Small Box and Two Huge Boxes. Interesting name, huh? Well, Juan's family, they had just recently, his older brothers and his parents had been baptized into the church. And they were so excited and joyful. They wanted to do what God wanted them to do. They wanted to follow the Bible. Plus, the family had another reason for being so excited and thankful to God, because their father had had a terrible disease. When he had gone to the doctor shook his head and he said, "I'm really sorry, but this disease isn't curable." And so the family thought their daddy was going to die. But God had different plans. And God, the Creator, healed Juan's dad of that terrible disease. Well, now, it was in the early 1960s, and their family had 3 girls and 6 brothers. So 9 children. So Dad, they really needed Dad to work. Well, he was offered a job up north in Oklahoma. I don't know where they were originally from, but in Oklahoma, to work on a big farm. Well, that sounded like a wonderful idea. And they thought that with the father working and a couple of the older brothers that were quite a bit older, that they could make enough money for them to survive on, to eat, and to buy clothes, and also to pay for Christian education for their children. They thought it'd be a great place for the kids to be. So they decided for that season to move up to that farm. Well, when they got there, there was lots of work to do on the farm. And so Father and those 2 older boys worked every day. But it wasn't as much money as they thought they would be earning. But it looked like maybe it would be all right. So when the end of that season came, they offered to stay the rest of the year and possibly some of the following year. But little did they know that that was not going to be a good thing for their family. It had been fall when they had moved there, and soon after that, it was like 3 weeks till Christmas, and all of the work suddenly dried up. Now, it had initially been really good, but then it had slowed down some till the father was only working a couple days a week, and there was just barely enough food for them to eat. Well, this wasn't good, but they'd already committed to stay. And then the winter hit. A very, very bad winter. The north wind blew. It was freezing cold. It rained all the time, and when it wasn't raining, it was snowing. And because they worked on a farm, everything was covered with snow. And the people they'd hired didn't have work to do. This was not good. Well, Father was worried about it. But he trusted God. He knew God would protect them. He didn't question God at all. But his younger children, they thought of something. Now, after they had learned about Jesus and all about the Bible, they had learned about tithing and offerings to help tell other people about Jesus. And the tithing, the Bible says that the tithe belonged to God in the first place. Well, when they had been working, Father had taken a tenth of everything they made, and he put it in a box that he had, kind of an unusual box. And he had it up on the shelf where they lived. And every time they got paid, he put a tenth of what they made plus some offering. Well, he had all the money that he had paid tithe, that he had put in the box for tithe, all during the summer and the fall months that they had worked. And the reason why it was still there is when they finally went back home, he was going to pay it at the church where they had been baptized. Well, the kids knew about that box. And you know, they were getting hungry, having hardly anything to eat, and it being so cold and everything. So they got together. You know, 9 kids is a big force to deal with. And all 9 of them came to their father and said, you know, what about that box you have? The box with the tithes and the offerings in it. Don't you think that God would want us to use that so we wouldn't be hungry? We think that would be a good idea, Daddy. Well, Father, he looked at them and he said, no, because that money is sacred. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to God. We can't spend it. No. So the box went back up on the shelf, and the kids went to bed, their tummies half full and growling. Well, the father, he felt really bad. Mother and the kids went to bed, but Father stayed up, thinking and talking to God, the Creator, about what was going on. Well, everybody went to sleep, except for Father. In the middle of the night, the father got an inspiration, and he went into the bedrooms, and he said, Mother, get up. Kids, get up and get dressed. Put on your winter clothes. We're going for a ride in the car. And the kids, they sat up in bed and they rubbed their eyes. Going for a ride in the country in the middle of the night? What was wrong with Dad? Well, they knew they needed to do what he said, so they got up and they all got dressed and they sleepily came out. And Dad said, I think it's a nice night for a ride. Well, nobody questioned Dad. They all got in the car. And you know, it had been snowing earlier that evening. But now the clouds had cleared and the great big moon was shining so bright it almost seemed like daytime. Well, as they were driving along, you know how it is, you look out the window at everything, and they saw what they thought were some sparkling lights off the side of the road. And Dad said, well, let's stop and take a look. So he backed up and he turned the car so the lights of the car were facing in that area where they thought they saw those sparkly lights. And it wasn't lights at all. It was a whole big family of raccoons. And on the side of the road, there were these two huge boxes, two of them. And those raccoons were trying to get in them. You know, raccoons have pretty long nails, and they can scratch things open, and they can bite things open. Well, when the kids saw they were raccoons, all the boys, all 6 of them, jumped out of the car. And then the girls. And they started chasing those raccoons all through the field that was there in front of them. The raccoons went this way and that way and that way. They thought their enemy was after them, and there was a lot of them. And they kept going in circles. Then they went far that way, far this way. And all the time those kids were running after those raccoons. Imagine chasing raccoons in the middle of the night. Well, finally, their bodies told them, it's the middle of the night and we're tired. So they walked back across the field up to where those 2 boxes were. And the kids thought, and Father was there, and they looked at their dad and said, can we open them and see what's in them? Obviously, they're out here in the middle of nowhere. Somebody's lost them. They don't belong to anybody. So Father said, yes, we can open them. So he took out his pocket knife and he cut open those boxes. And what do you suppose was inside those boxes? Both boxes were full of frozen food. I mean, I'm not talking about food that's not supposed to be frozen, but this was frozen food like they sell in the store. All sorts of things. You know, frozen food can be frozen bread dough. It can be vegetables. It can be pasta dishes. It could have been meat. It could have been like TV dinners. It could have been anything. It could have had juice in there. They were huge, and they were filled clear to the top. And Mom looked at Dad, and Dad looked at the kids, and he said, our Creator God knew we were hungry, and look what He has provided us with. 2 huge boxes full of frozen food. No one else but God could have planned that. Maybe with the help of some of the angels. Who knows? I've tried to think of what might have happened to put big boxes of frozen food on the side of the road. But, you know, things have known to be not the way they should. Doors on big semi-trucks have come open and hit a bump and things have bumped out. You never know. Or maybe God had the angels put them there. I don't know. But the one thing we do know is God rewarded that father and the family for not opening that little box and taking out God's money. They had done what the Bible said to do, and God had rewarded them. Thank you, boys and girls. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.